Swerve to agency, from intrinsic indeterminacy to agentive matter. More than 2,000 years before contemporary theories of material agency, an extraordinarily small deviation unsettled the idea of an obedient material world. Democritus had conceived reality as atoms moving through the void, their motions governed by necessity. Epicurus inherited this atomism but introduced a consequential modification. Matter was not entirely obedient to a predetermined course. Atoms could deviate. Lucretius, writing in the 1st century BCE, gives us the most substantial surviving account of this Epicurean idea in De Rerum Natura. He describes the primordia, the first bodies, or atoms, as departing ever so slightly from their course at no determinate time or place. This deviation became known as the clinamen, the swerve. The swerve matters because of where its cause is, or more precisely, where it is not. No external agent reaches into the atomic world to alter its trajectory, nor does Lucretius provide a preceding mechanical event that fully determines the deviation. To do so would merely move the causal problem backward. The deviation belongs to the behavior of the primordia themselves. Lucretius describes its consequence with extraordinary force. Fati foedera rumpat. It breaks the bonds or laws of fate. The clinamen, therefore, does more than introduce unpredictability into an otherwise deterministic universe. It locates the source of indeterminacy in matter itself. Matter is no longer simply the passive terminus of causes originating elsewhere. Something can happen differently because of what matter itself does. This does not mean that Epicurus or Lucretius possessed a contemporary theory of material agency. Their atoms do not intend, decide, or possess intelligence in the human sense. To call them agentive is our terminology, not theirs. But if agency is understood more minimally as the capacity to make a difference, to affect what happens without that difference being wholly imposed from outside, then the clinamen presents a remarkably early opening toward material agency. The distinction is important. Indeterminacy alone does not make matter agentive. A universe subjected to an external source of randomness could be unpredictable while its matter remained entirely passive. What makes the clinamen philosophically provocative is that the deviation is materially situated. There is no other agent behind the swerve. An unexpected historical translation makes this gap almost uncannily explicit. In an anonymous English translation of De Rerum Natura published in London in 1743, Lucretius's description of atoms departing ever so slightly from their course is rendered as their ability to decline a little from the direct line by their own strength and power. The crucial words, by their own strength and power, have no equivalent in the corresponding Latin. Lucretius simply describes the bodies as departing slightly from their course. The addition is striking because it inserts into the translation precisely what the Latin leaves unresolved. If the deviation is intrinsic to the atom but has no external initiator, in what sense is the atom itself the source of what happens? The translator appears to bridge indeterminacy and agency by supplying an answer, by their own strength and power. Whether this is a legitimate implication of the clinamen or an 18th century projection onto it is precisely the question. But the discrepancy makes visible a conceptual gap that might otherwise remain hidden. This ancient problem takes on renewed significance in contemporary theories that reject the conception of matter as inert substance awaiting form, instruction, or animation from elsewhere. From Spinoza's immanent capacities of bodies, through later philosophies of becoming and relation to contemporary new materialisms, matter increasingly appears not as the passive substrate of events, but as a participant in their production. This is also where the clinamen intersects with my larger interest in material intelligence. Artificial intelligence is still overwhelmingly imagined as abstract intelligence, computation occurring somewhere behind the material world, represented through the seemingly immaterial space of the screen. Yet AI is already profoundly material, dependent upon minerals, energy, processors, infrastructures, bodies, environments, and physical processes. More consequentially, its future may lie not simply in increasingly powerful abstract computation, but in a more direct entanglement of computation with materials capable of sensing, responding, adapting, forming, and transforming. Seen from this perspective, the question of material agency becomes a question of artificial intelligence as well. What happens when AI no longer merely issues instructions to matter from an apparently separate computational realm, but becomes inseparable from the material processes through which sensing, decision, and action occur? The trajectory from the clinamen to material AI is obviously not a continuous historical line, but the ancient Swerve poses a question that remains unexpectedly contemporary. What changes when matter is no longer understood as entirely obedient? Perhaps genuinely agentive AI begins not when intelligence finally escapes matter, but when we recognize that it never did, and when artificial intelligence more fully materializes.